The Modern Girl and Why She is Painted. Consideration of the Flapper and the Revolutionary Incorrigible Youth, by Richard Le Gallienne. Vanity Fair, January 1924. The feminization of the world is imminent. Yet the world does not appear to be growing any gentler, or to show any advance in what used to be known as the feminine virtues. Can it be that woman herself is losing them, and that her apparent victory over the world is really a victory for the male? In short, is she becoming more of a man or less of a woman? No, not less of a woman, I think. She is too shrewd for that. But more of a man, perhaps. That is, she is aiming to combine, in herself, the dominating qualities of both sexes. And to tell the truth, she seems, as the phrase is, to be getting away with it. No one can fail to observe that her very efficient invasion of the sphere of those activities which used to be regarded as exclusively masculine has coincided with a marked accentuation of herself in her own peculiar sphere of influence. The old-fashioned woman, reformed, began by scorning the lures and vanities of her sex, wore horrible trousers, and generally affected an unbecoming mannishness of dress and demeanor. Her modern sister makes no such mistake. On the contrary, never in history has woman so unblushingly capitalized the fascinations of her sex, nor made it more seductively clear to all the world that male and female created he, them. While the modern woman drives a hard bargain with you in real estate, her deed box and her vanity box are side by side. And I have little doubt that Lady Astor powders her nose with equanimity in the House of Commons, as she faces the boorish insults of Labourite MPs. Woman indeed still keeps in her hands the immemorial cards of her own sex, and wants, and gets, the high cards of man as well. Nothing will satisfy her but all the picture cards. It may be that she is thus evolving toward a more complete human being than either man or woman has ever been before. A new sex? Who knows? Meanwhile, let there be no mistake. Whether she sits on juries, attends prize fights, or fights in a battalion of death, she remains no less a woman than ever. Perhaps, indeed, her masculine disguises make her womanhood the more apparent. I don't mean merely that she remains the same good wife and mother. Nothing so prosaic, though she may be that too. But I mean that whatever other role she assumes, there is one traditional role she has not the smallest intention of foregoing. That of Circe, the eternal enchantress. She is never tired of letting you know that she is of the same sex as her famous sister, Cleopatra. It is one of the many paradoxes of our paradoxical era that woman's new seriousness of purpose should be accompanied by so widespread an outburst of feminine vanity and luxury. The time is out of joint, say the philosophers. But the trouble with philosophers is that there has never been a time which they didn't find out of joint. There has never been a period in history when, according to them, the world was not going to the dogs. And according to them, the blame has always been with the young people of the time. The revolutionary, incorrigible young. Just now, it is the young women in particular who are under fire. The young men are not much better, but it is the young women of the day that are especially scandalizing the moralists. Their independence, their impatience of restraint, their pagan pursuit of pleasure, their craving for excitement, their absorption in their looks and their clothes, their determination to be beautiful, and let who will be humdrum. These characteristics of the modern girl from 15 to 50 are causing much disquietude, much shaking of serious heads. Recently, the suffragist was the awful feminine example. But the suffragist's work is done, and she has been succeeded by the flapper. Flapperism in all its forms is the menace of the hour. Perfectly awful stories are current about the flapper, and it is only a brave soul here and there who has a good word to say for her. The actual facts about her cannot properly be known to persons of philosophic age. Probably the young man with whom she orgies and drinks deep, so it is said, are the only reliable authorities on her psychology, and these young men are not interested in her psychology at all. As says a dramatist of Charles II's time, another great age of flapperdom, "Women, the rogues, have got an ill habit of preferring beauty, no matter where they find it." It is not a new pursuit, this curiosity and the desire of beauty. And who is going to blame them? After all, man's great concern with woman is her beauty, and that being so, it is only natural that her beauty should be woman's great concern also. The young man of the period must be the best judge of the young woman of the period. If she seems good, that is, beautiful in his eyes, what has anyone else to say about it? Whatever older heads have to advance by way of criticism must be shared by the young of both sexes. For now, as always, they valiantly aid and abet each other. But as a matter of fact, it will not do, it is not fair, to blame the young for the flapperism of the times. These young sons and daughters of joy are but reaping the harvest, the whirlwind if you like, sown by their immediate elders of 20 and 30 years ago. They are the children of that materialistic science, that gospel of pleasure and artifice, that philosophy of go as you please and gather ye roses while you may, which began their instructive and destructive work towards the end of the last century, finding in Verlaine, Oscar Wilde, Aubrey Beardsley, and Bernard Shaw their seductively brilliant and amusing exponents. The foundations of Victorian morality, or at least propriety, had been already sapped by grave biologists and one grim philosopher, Nietzsche, who, for the time at least, had seemed to rob religion and conventional ethics of their authority. Though, as we are already coming to see, they were only superficially destructive, and were but clearing the ground for that deeper and sincerer expression of man's spiritual instincts, which, beneath all our temporary cynicism and disillusion, is already underway. Meanwhile, we are in the thick of a carnival of the released human instincts, disporting themselves in unrestrained protest against the hypocrisy and humdrum of Victorian conventions. Maybe the pendulum is swinging far, but a new equilibrium is in sight. And meanwhile, though we may regret certain phenomena of the change, the transition presents no cause for serious disquiet, and the phenomena are at least picturesque and full of dramatic significance. Perhaps, for the moment, no one has any fixed belief in anything in particular, except that life is short, and that, as the phrase is, we only live once. Therefore, the young seem bent in squeezing as much out of their short lives as possible, getting rich quick, speeding up their sensations, dancing, feasting, dressing, exploiting themselves and their opportunities to the selfish limit, and generally jazzing their brief space of existence. It cannot and will not last. But there is nothing unnatural about it, given all the circumstances, among which, I suppose, must be counted that great war, without which no moral argument is now complete, though that war itself was rather an effect than a cause. In this universal carnival, woman is naturally a leading figure, for she is at once the source and symbol of pleasure, with a capital P. Unless she joins the dance, there is no dance. Besides, during the Victorian era, she served an unusually long bondage to the domestic virtues. Shall we blame her if, seeing her opportunity, she takes her fling for a while and gives rein to the decorative and histrionic impulses of her nature? She is but applying the lessons of those 1890 poets and artists who emphasized beauty as the whole duty of woman. "There are only two kinds of women, the plain and the colored," said Oscar Wilde in A Woman of No Importance. And the modern woman took that and other such worldly wisdom from the same source so eagerly to heart that, were he alive, Wilde would have delightedly to amend his epigram and say that nowadays there is only one kind of woman, the colored. For who will deny that the plain woman has completely and mysteriously disappeared? Yes, the world was never so full of beautiful women as it is now. At all events, woman has succeeded in making us think so. And there is no question that the average of feminine beauty is startlingly high. The reason, aside from the part that athletics and hygienic clothing have played in her recent physical development, is that never before have so many women at once set their minds on being beautiful. And this beauty is largely a creation of literature. It bears out the truth of another of Wilde's creative epigrams: nature imitates art more than art imitates nature. For the last 20 or 30 years, writers and artists generally have waged a campaign of what one might call romantic artifice applied to life. Woman has been encouraged in every direction to cultivate her beauty and to dramatize herself, to emphasize her strangeness and heighten her natural sorcery. The influence of Aubrey Beardsley alone has been incalculable, and the teachings of such artists and writers have been taken up by an army of imaginative modistes, professional creators of fashions, practitioners of all the various arts concerned with the beauty of woman, manufacturers of all delicate feminine commodities employed in such arts, and all these have been exploited by a vast system of skillful creative advertising which has become an art in itself. Catering upon a regal scale to feminine vanity has proven a lucrative and pleasant occupation. The world of business has seen the immense profit to be made by appealing to the vanity of woman, and has deliberately capitalized it. Arts of the toilet, therefore, that had previously been employed only by great ladies, ladies of the theatrical profession, and professional beauties generally, have now been placed within the reach of every girl who can read the popular magazines, or even the illustrated newspapers. There is not a woman now left in America who is not a professional beauty, or encouraged so to regard herself. Thus, the powder puff and the lipstick are as common, perhaps even commoner, than toothbrushes. Beauty has become democratized, and pulchritude for the proletariat is the latest extension of liberty, equality, and fraternity. As a result, our streets, our offices and shops, even our factories, are peopled with pocket Cleopatras. Miniature Mona Lisas and half-portion Helens of Troy are a drug on the market. Every city, even every village, has become a theatrical production in which all the women we meet are leading ladies. The world behind the scenes, once so mysterious, is no longer a mystery at all, for every block is a dressing room, with beauties making up at every step. The whole earth has gone on masquerade. Every little feminine creature we meet is absorbed in a dream of herself. For the moment, she may be a stenographer or a sales lady, but in her heart, she is a beautiful and romantic being on the lookout for a luxurious destiny, a princess in disguise who but hides her light. The moralist may shake his head, but for the more human observer of these little figures, these really surprisingly successful imitation beauties, these myriad doll-like copies of illustrious originals, are not without pathos, and the heart must be hard that begrudges them their poor little dream. After all, they but express the eternal human need of romance. The gospel of work is all very well, but man lives not by work alone, any more than by bread. We all need a little spiced cake in our lives. And no one who honestly faces the truth about modern work, the kind of work these millions of girls are driven to do, can set it up as an interest in which they can, or ought, to find the joyous satisfaction so volubly preached by those who haven't it to do. What wonder that they set their hopes on some silly movie paradise, spend their money on clinging clothes, and are feverish for such dancing and such jazz as is within their reach. What wonder if they long to be beautiful, if they take refuge in some sort of dream life, centering in their own looks and tempting charms. What wonder if they see themselves as Cleopatras in miniature, whom an Anthony will seek. But beauty is, in a way, only an aristocratic expression of nature. It must be born of long and fine processes, and it is to be feared that the present democratic imitation, clever though it be, is, when we look more closely into it, only a depressing vulgarization. The proverb has it that beauty is only skin deep, but that is only partially true. Complexions are not everything, nor those pathetically amusing mimicries of strangeness and high-bred hauteur which our standardized beauties affect. The arts of the surface cannot do all. Beauty cannot be entirely applied from the outside, but must well up into the face from the inside. And in this interior soul of beauty, the modern girl, with all her lipsticks, powder puffs, vanity boxes, adhesive eyelashes, etc., is sadly lacking. Her very preoccupation with her beauty has defeated its own ends. It has produced a race of hard-eyed egoists, in whom vanity seems to have swallowed up all other feelings. Such beauty is too often a rose without perfume, and we feel that these vivid creations of the beauty parlor are not really women after all, but automatons, skillfully constructed and decorated to represent real women. They remind one of those water nymphs, Lorelei or Nice, who were very seductive at a first glance, but who, on closer scrutiny, were seen to be hollow in their backs, mere masks, mere painted husks of women, creatures without hearts and souls. Indeed, it is impossible not to feel that such beauty as the modern woman has thus arduously achieved has been at the expense of her humanity, at the expense of those qualities and graces which are inseparable from the ideal she fondly conceives herself as attaining the ideal of, the lady. An imitation beauty, an imitation lady, and an imitation courtesan. Though that may be a hard saying, it is to be feared that it broadly generalizes what one might call the feminine mob of the moment, that histrionic multitude of women who crowd most glaringly to the front of the modern picture. They do not, of course, constitute the whole of modern women, but they are the women that first catch the eye, swarming like moths into the limelight. And these, I am inclined to think, are not all that they are painted. If the observer misunderstands them, it is they themselves that invite misunderstanding. That curious cult of the courtesan, for instance. The cult, I mean, of her superficial lure, her ways of dress and adornment, and of emphasizing her sexual appeal, which again is a reflex of the widespread cult of the courtesan in modern literature. I do not believe that it is more than a pose. Indeed, what we call emancipation is undoubtedly bringing about a more stimulating camaraderie between women and men than has existed before. Her meeting men on an equal footing in the business of life has perhaps necessitated a strengthening of her natural safeguards, and entailed on men a more genuine chivalry. It may serve to bring out many admirable qualities in the modern woman, to give her a new self-reliance, and qualify her to be a more suitable all-around companion to her masculine partner in the adventure of living. Society seems to be going through a process of reconstruction, and the process, as it has always been, is disquieting. But the modern woman and man alike may eventually come out of it, none the worse for having kicked over the traces and jazzed around the maypole with unbecoming and ostentatious levity.